Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monday Mentor. I'm Jen Whitmer, and I help teams and leaders solve conflict and cultivate communication so they can create empowered teams. And on Mondays, I always love bringing in a fellow expert, somebody who knows what they're doing in their field, to be a little leadership mentor for us. And today, I am so excited about having Csilla on with us. She is a speaker coach, a fantastic speaker in her own right, but she really helps people elevate their visibility and the power of visibility in leadership. And I'm super excited for all the greatness that she's going to offer us today. Thank you so much for being here, Csilla. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Jen. I mean, it's such an honor. And hanging out with you is always just so fun, filled with so much joy and excitement. So, absolutely love being here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad. So tell us a little bit. I always like to start with, how did you get here? Like, what is your journey into helping entrepreneurs and leaders be more visible? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, obviously, it's been a long journey. It's been 20 some years. I'm not going to take that long to explain it, but I started out 22 years ago as a singer, performing artist. I was traveling a lot, singing and performing on a lot of different stages all over the world. And I did that for about 10 years when I also started doing a lot of keynote speaking. I guess first I started to share my story, my own story. And when people heard me, would ask me like, hey, can you come and share your story here as well? And can you come and share your story for my group? And so I just really put in a lot of practice as far as like being on stage goes, how to put a presentation together. And so it was about 5 or 6 years ago when my husband and I moved to Nashville, Tennessee. And almost accidentally, I happened upon creating a community, I guess, of women based off the fact that I just had a lot of women, specifically women, come to me and ask me, how are you so confident on camera? How are you so articulate whenever you do a presentation? How do you put your presentations together? How do you even do like an IG live? Or how do you feel confident stepping in front of the camera? And so it was just a little light bulb moment. It kind of went off, and I was like, "Ooh, maybe there's something there." And going back to my own story, just I have a passion really for helping women feel confident in not only discovering their own voice, but also leaning into using their voice confidently and sharing their message, but doing so in an effective way, right?
Yeah.
Because it matters how you show up on stage, it matters how you present your message. And in a competitive world, we want to make sure that we are also showing up with our skills polished. And so I just want to help women more specifically. I work with men too, but I really want to help women show up on stage prepared, feeling like I've got this. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So basically that's a short story.
That's a short 20-year story. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And I learned something new. I did not realize, even though we've known each other for a little while, I didn't realize you started as a singer. So
Yeah.
some of my friends who show up in the comments always giggle when I start singing, because that was my background as well.
I didn't know that either.
There's always some kind of musical something that happens. But so I want to kind of backtrack just a little bit, and like, you recognizing that there is this little problem of, how do I show up confidently? And I think we feel that in all kinds of ways. There are a lot of people who are like, well, I don't want to speak up in the meeting because of X, Y, or Z, or I don't want to stand up and do the presentation. I just want to do the creative work behind it, or I just want to do the strategy behind it, or I'm just the IT person creating the code. I don't want to be the one who is sharing with my out loud words, as I like to
Mhm.
say. So how did you discover that that little distance between just showing up and showing up confidently?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I guess you could take it back to my own journey. I think sometimes here's what I ran into: two types of people. right? Obviously, speaking in front of an audience is one of the greatest fears of a lot of people.
So if that's you and you're in the comments, you can just tell us. Like,
Yes,
yes, I am terrified of that.
no shame in that. I think there's a lot of people struggle with that, myself included, when I first started out. It's such an interesting thing. I've been singing a lot, and then even for me making that jump from singing to actually sharing my own message, my own words, was a very big stretch. And I think the
Mhm.
reason why is because it's almost like as soon as you start sharing your ideas, it's kind of like you're putting a target on your back. Here, criticize me. And there's going to be someone who's not going to agree with what you say, with your ideas, or how you say it. And so it's a very visible way of sharing your thoughts. Like, it's easy to say it from behind the computer, but as soon as you start, and you go on video, or you go on stage, you are basically asking to be criticized. And so I think that the more we know about how to deliver a presentation, the more confident and comfortable we're going to be able to be. And also, not only that, but when those questions and critics come in, we're like, okay, you know what, this is normal, but I've got this because I have the skill that I've been working on, right? And so I think the difference is the two types of people that I've seen is either the one is completely shies away from speaking because it's so, frightening, or the other person is what I call the wing it Wanda, right? The person who's like, hey, I've been speaking since I've been 2 years old. I can just put some words together and come up with something. But then they end up walking off stage, or off of from behind the camera, and feeling like, ooh, I missed this point, and I really wanted to share this story, and I really wanted to touch on this. And so confidence to me comes from preparation and time,
Mhm.
right? And so I think time obviously is not something that we have control over. We just have to put in the time. But the preparation part of it, and knowing exactly what goes into a confident speech or an effective speech, is a great place to start. Now, I don't know if that answered your question, but that's basically.
No, I think there's I'm like writing notes because I want to, like, oh, I want to say this, I want to say this, because there's so many great things that you said, and you echoed something you mentioned in your introduction. Lots and lots of practice.
Mhm.
One of my favorite things, when I was in high school, I got to perform at Carnegie Hall. And so there was this, like, there's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? It's practice, practice, practice. That's the phrase. But my choir teacher always said, practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. And
Mhm.
so there's this line between, we do have to just put in the hours. Like, there is an element of, how did you get so good? Practice. But the key is to practice the right things. And I think that's so key to what you said. And that confidence is the skill of knowing that you've practiced the right things.
Mhm.
So,
Yes.
how do you help people with that preparation process? So we can, like, I am guilty of being a wing it Wanda. So I was like, oh, I resemble that remark. But there's a difference between when you show up prepared and knowledgeable than just showing up knowledgeable. How do you help
Mhm.
people with that?
Yes. So I'm so glad that you kind of pointed that out, because that's something also that I have been learning for the last 10 years, is that you want to be strategic in what you practice, right? Because you can basically strategically, or you can practice something the wrong way and it just becomes permanent, right? Instead of becoming perfect, it just becomes permanent, and then it's hard to break it. And so I developed a methodology in my business and how I coach people, in taking them through a step, and what are those specific steps that are going to make a speech magnetic, that's going to make you memorable for your audience, that's going to help you remember all the pieces that you're supposed to be. And again, it came from being strategic, but also over time, right?
Mhm.
So it's like studying the people that have been doing this for a very long time, and not only just watching how they do that and studying it on my own, but actually hiring them as coaches and mentors and asking, like, how do you do that? So I remember the first time I saw John Maxwell speak on a stage, and he's one of my, like, all-time mentors. And I was in the room with thousands of other people, and we literally were hanging on every single word he said. And 1 minute we were crying and then we were laughing, and like he just had us mesmerized almost. And then when I joined his mentorship program, because I wanted to become a better communicator and a better speaker and presenter, I remember sitting in a training session with one of the head coaches, and he dissected John's presentation literally minute by minute, and showing us how intentionally the whole presentation was put together.
Mm-hmm.
That he used, a funny joke here, and he used a sad story here, or he used data here, and he was speaking to the right brain of the right side of our brain, the left brain. And like, it was just, I was like, oh my goodness. So he's not just like naturally like an amazing speaker. He actually works at this, right?
Yeah.
And so when you get to the place like you say you're a winged Wanda, but I'm pretty sure that you have done this for
Oh, I
years
have
and years
repented
and
of
years.
my ways.
Exactly. And so in that case, you can wing it because you've already put in the time and the preparation, because there's already been years and years of preparation, and
Yeah.
you can wing it, but it's not really winging. It's just lots of skill behind it, really.
It's true. I mean, I literally have repented of my ways and I have learned the power of rehearsal, something that I resist as a speaker. And some of that is personality because I love the people. And so I've kind of reverse engineered practice times. Sometimes I'm like, I just get some people and let me practice in front of them because that helps me, not just practice in front of my mirror that is over there. So there's all those kind of different tactics. But I think the key that I want to underline that you said is that there is a strategy. So I think, can you help us connect? Like, I think I know what you might say, but I'd love to hear you talk about the difference between this big, what we think of as this big 45-minute, hour-long keynote. And some people are like, that is never what I want to do. But I do want to present my ideas in the boardroom in a cohesive way, or I want to go on IG Live and tell something in a cohesive way. What is the through line between the big keynote and the standing in the boardroom and presenting your ideas?
Yeah. So believe it or not, presenting a 45-minute speech is easier than doing like a 5-minute presentation.
I 100% agree with you.
But I think that at the end of the day, they have the same steps in place.
Mm-hmm.
The process where I start my clients and myself also when I'm doing presentation is reverse engineering. So I always start at the end.
Yes.
What is the objective and the outcome of this speech, of this presentation? What is one thing I want my audience, my listeners, people who are sitting in the boardroom to walk away and to be undoubtingly knowing what you just wanted to communicate, right? Because again, research says that 75% of or 80% of the people who walk away from a presentation literally minutes afterwards, if you ask them what the presentation was about, they couldn't tell. Not only that, but the presenter itself is not able to succinctly say, this is what my presentation was about exactly, right? And so I think it's important to say, okay, what is the objective? Can I put it in a sentence? By the end of this presentation, I want people to walk away knowing that when you follow a system, speaking on stage is easy, right? Like it can be that simple. And then you reverse engineer from there, right? And so once we figure that out, then we can maybe put in 2 or 3 key points that support the thesis that we want to make. We want to put some stories. A story can be literally a 10 to 30-second something that really just helps your audience remember the key points that you're trying to make and gives it that nice flow. But I would say that's the number one crucial thing is knowing exactly what you want people to walk away and what you want them to remember.
That is incredibly valuable. So if you've been multitasking and are your way, like come back. And this point is so key. Being able to distill what you want people to know in a sentence will make everything about your presentation more clear. And that includes when you're just in the status meeting on Monday mornings, or you're presenting to the client, or you're up on stage, or you're doing an IG Live. You can distill your point, like Chilla's saying, you have so much clarity to build everything else out because you know where you're going. Beginning with the end in mind is such a powerful life skill, but also particularly when you're talking about presentations. So I love that you help people see that, and that also I love a story. Like I think how we want people to feel at the end, the story is what makes it sticky.
Yes,
And
absolutely,
so
absolutely. And I want to point out, that one of the great things about coming up with your objective, it's not only for your audience to have clarity, but for you, when you
yes,
really clarify your objective, it helps so much, even with just the preparational process of putting the presentation together. And so I
absolutely.
think it's absolutely key
Mhm.
when doing a presentation or preparing for one. Yeah.
And
And
then
that can be an IG live or anything where you're
yeah.
getting an idea across. Yeah.
And to bring it all back to what you said at the beginning, that's where the confidence comes from, because confidence is a skill. And if I walk up into even my status meeting and I know here's the point I want to get across, I'm just more confident because I'm not wondering, what am I trying to say? What am I point? I
Mhm.
might fumble over my words a little bit, as we've seen this morning, but I know what I'm trying to get across. And that's part of confidence is that clarity of thought. And so, you said that at the very beginning, you can stand up on stage and be confident. And it's because you know where you're going.
Mhm.
And I think
Yeah.
that's so powerful.
Yeah.
So, again, it's time for us to close. I'm like, oh, I want to keep talking to you, Sheila. And some of that is just because we're in the same, industry and speaking, and like
Mhm.
I could geek out about this for forever. And but I think that I would love for you just to tell us, before you tell us all the great things about where to find you, what's the importance? Ooh, what is the importance of being visible? Like, why is that an important skill? We've talked a lot about the how and the strategy of getting up on stage, but why is that so important?
Yes, yes. And I will get there in just a second. I did want to speak to the confidence piece
Oh,
because
sure.
I think this is something that a lot of people, maybe there's a myth around it. We're hoping, that we're going to build our confidence and then we're going to go out and speak. And I want people to know that confidence comes as a side effect and result of the fact that you show up, right? The other thing is, you never fully 100% want to feel confident, because if you do, it means you're not really stretching and growing yourself.
Right.
So as soon as I know that, oh, I've got this, there's nothing, I feel like I stopped growing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that helps people, knowing that, first of all, confidence comes as a byproduct of me showing up, doing it scared, not always knowing what I'm doing, messing up, learning along the way. And the more I do it, the more confident I will feel. But then also that I'm not going for feeling 100% confident, because as soon as I get there, I realize, you know what? I'm not growing and pushing myself anymore out of my comfort zone. So I just kind of
Absolutely.
wanted to speak to that confidence,
No, I think
because
it's
I know with
so
speaking, it's a
important.
big thing. Yeah.
It's so important because you said it, and I'm going to just repeat it, to do it scared, that there is a scared part of that. And so the way I love it is like there's your comfort zone is right here. And then there is the panic zone where it's actually too far. It's too much. But then in between those two things, in education, we call it the zone of proximal development. I love to call it the magic zone because that's where growth happens, in between the panic zone and just outside your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do it scared a little bit. And that's so great. And it comes over time from practice. So,
Absolutely.
so good. Okay.
Absolutely.
So tell us
Okay.
why being visible is important.
Yes. So, I mean, it's not news, right? We live in an age where there's a lot of noise, a lot of things going on, right? And so I think it's twofold. First of all, if you want to grow your business, if you want to be a good leader, and you really show up in front of your employees or people that you're working with, your audience, nothing builds build trust and credibility faster than you showing up and communicating and being like, having people see your face, hear your voice, get your vision, get your ideas, right? Because it's no longer, business is no longer how it was even 10 years ago. People want to get to know you, and being a vulnerable leader and sharing some of those pieces is so important, I think.
Yeah.
And then, to speaking to the noise factor, like if you are building a business, um, nothing makes you stand out faster, right? Than speaking in front of an audience or showing up on your own social media platforms. Can you build a business without? Absolutely. But I think it's going to be a lot slower.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that nowadays, and I know it's not always fair, it's not the one that has the best product that is the most successful, but it's the one that's who's most visible and is able to communicate their vision consistently and regularly and in front of an audience. I think that's why it's important.
Yeah, no, I think that translates from entrepreneurship and into the workplace, because if you have a specific point of view in your organization and you are able to clearly articulate that, people start to notice. And
Yes,
that's important.
absolutely.
And it also, like you said, builds trust with your team, and it builds trust up the chain of command as well. So incredibly valuable. And thank you for your great wisdom today. So tell the people where to find you. Tell them a little bit about your sophisticated speaker suite. Tell us how we can keep in touch with you, Csilla.
Yeah, so the Sophisticated Speaker Suite is really my page on my website with all the offers, that ways that people can work with me. There are two ways that I work one-on-one with clients. If somebody needs more of a high touch, we're going to get in customized. I'm going to help you build your presentation and all the stuff. You can find that also on that page. But then I also have a course, a signature course that I created called the Speak to Scale Academy. And that's specifically geared towards executives and business owners who are kind of like the face of their business, and they want to know how to tell their message, how they can show up confidently with their message in front of an audience, and also present in such a way that actually leads people then to sign up and work with you or buy your product. So it's more of a selling the way you present, but without sounding salesy.
Yeah.
And so basically that page is just all my offers and ways that people can work with me. Yeah.
I love it. It's so good. And Kimberly, Lisa, there's a few people on Facebook that have been watching. Thank you for being here and participating. Where can we follow you? Are we at Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Reddit? Where are we going to find you?
Yes, so all the places, but I'm most active on Instagram. My handle, and I'm going to spell it just because my name is so spelled so differently, but my handle is my first and last name. So it's CSILLAMUSCAN. So that's my handle. And then my website is also my first and last name, but I usually just tell people sophisticatedspeaker.com because it's easier to remember.
There you go. There you go. Well, I am so grateful for you. Everybody, please go follow Csilla. And you can find her through Instagram. I follow her, so you can check out other people's follows. Make sure that you follow up with her. She has lots of great advice to offer. Clearly, as we've spent so much time talking about the importance of visibility and strategy and practice in getting up in front and clearly sharing your message. So I just appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here. Next week is a Monday off. It is Labor Day, but I will be back with Monday Mentor, whatever that next date is. I think it's the 14th. I think that's what it is. Maybe the 12th, something along those lines. But I will be here back with Monday Mentor then. And thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, Jen, so much. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.